Hi, Peter Charles here of Hooked Fly Fly Fishing. And today I'm going to go through the tying of a simplified gurgler for use in striped bass. You can also use gurglers for smallmouth and largemouth bass as well. I mean, pretty well any bass species are going to hit a gurgler. This is tied fairly large for striped bass, obviously. And it's tied in basically one of two colors I use, either white or black. The black is for nighttime use, the white is for daytime use. Obviously, if I was tying this in a smaller size for smallmouth or largemouth, I might use different colors. But today we're going to do a black one, and we'll see how that goes together. So let's start off with the materials. My hook is a saltwater streamer hook, 4 extra long. My thread is 3/0 black. I'm looking for something that's robust here, so we're going to use a heavy thread. My flash is black crystal flash. My body is black ice chenille in a large size. I've got black foam strip. This is roughly a centimeter wide and about 8 centimeters, 10 centimeters long. And my tail material is black bucktail. So let's get started on the tying. I'm going to leave some room at the front because that's where we're going to tie in our foam, and we're going to need that room to spare. Okay, we got that cast on. Now I'm going to add a little bit of glue back here because one of the problems we have with large fish and popper style flies is that you can get the body of the fly spinning around the hook when you get big fish hitting it. So we're just going to work this back, and when it hits the glue, it'll stick that thread to the shank of the hook. Stop at the bend. Now come back. Now leave a bit of space there. The next component is our crystal flash, and I'm just going to put on about 5 or 6 strands. We want this to show up fairly well, so we don't want to be bashful with it. Couple of turns, fold it over. Okay, just let that sit there. Now you can be fairly generous with the bucktail, and this is the hair at the bottom of the bucktail is hollow, and this is one fly where you can use this hollow hair. We don't mind if it splays a bit. It actually adds a little bit of movement to the fly. Just make sure you've got, bucktail hair that is long enough. So this has always got small stuff down at the butt of the hairs, so I'm going to stroke that out. I'll just test my length here. You can leave this tail quite long if you want. And you can use other materials here too if you wanted to. You could use saddle hackle. You could use ostrich hurl. You could use Icelandic sheep. There's a variety of different things you can use. Let's tie those back on. We had a few slip out. I'm leaving in a mistake here so you can see how to recover from it. This sometimes happens when you're tying on a big clump of bucktail. It's often better to tie on one or two smaller clumps rather than try and tie on one big clump, and because you see what just happened. A lot of them just slipped out. The next step is to tie on our foam, and you'll notice I've got a wedge that I've cut in at the front. That's our tie-in point. But first I'm going to put a little dab of glue right here just to hold our foam. I'm just going to fold that over. I'm just going to use a pinch loop. Pull up. We don't want it to spin. If it starts to spin, take a moment to correct it, and we just wind this all down. That's good. Now bring your thread to the back. Now we're going to put in our ice chenille, and you'll notice I've taken a bit of the ice chenille off to create a tie-in point. Now we'll bring our thread to the front, and we'll just put in a half hitch here because we're just going to use my rotary vise to put this on. Make sure you're crowding these turns together and leave it a bit short and don't tie it right to the end. Now you're going to get some stray bits in here. I've got a half hitch tool and I'm going to use that to push those stray bits back. And actually you can usually actually put a half hitch in here and you'll knock those back. And then you can wrap them over. Make a nice bed for when we put down our foam. Now we fold our foam over, pushing it down and clamping it with our fingers and pull up like this to avoid our foam spinning around too much. Put a few wraps in there, be generous. Now take a moment to make sure everything is level and straight. Now we're going to fold this back. We want a nice lip there, and we can extend that usually about to the eye of the hook. This is what's going to push the water. So we want that section to be bold. And by folding it back, we give it some strength. So the force of our popping this gurgler does not cause that to collapse. And just make sure it's square. Some more wraps in there. As I say, this is the reason why we're using 3/0, nice and generous. Now we've got this bit here, that's surplus. So just cut it off nice and straight. And you can trim that a little bit if you want. There we go. Now the last step before the gluing, to make sure everything is nice and square, lift this up and put a whole bunch of wraps in underneath there, right up against it. Really fill that up. This is another reason why we're using 3/0. I want a bump of thread underneath this. And that helps to keep this standing up. If it's laying flat, it doesn't push as much water. Now, there's not much room for a whip finisher, so I'm going to use my half hitch tool in here. Then I'll trim off my thread. Now the last step is just to throw in some glue in here, head cement or some UV glue or whatever you like to use. Just make sure that is good and solid so it doesn't come apart. I mean, you get a big bass hit that, it'll put the fly under a lot of stress, so you want that well glued. So there's our simplified gurgler. Fish it in as a white pattern or a black pattern for nighttime fishing. You can fish it hard, you can fish it very slowly. There's different ways that you can approach it. Just let the bass tell you which is the best method and which way they want. You can even fish this in fairly choppy water. I've caught fish, even when there's a bit of chop on the water, they'll still hit it. Anyway, the simplified gurgler for striped bass. Easy to tie, easy to fish, and it's very effective. So, good fishing. Cheers.